Okay, I've got the slideshow I'm about to show you. I want to mention a couple of other things that are on this page. There is a big folder of stock images that I'll mention to you later, and I threw the link at the very top of the page so that you can easily find it later. Okay, if you scroll down, I do have a link to where you can sign up for a pathway. If you haven't claimed a pathway that you want to do your brochure on yet, please take a second, grab a spot somewhere that's left over in this particular chart here. Okay. Below that, I've got a basic outline of our different pathways here in the state of Kentucky. And then I've got a whole bunch of different like resources. Like we are going to build specific dividers and break up our brochure in Adobe Illustrator with columns. And then I've got some so-called like good examples of different types of brochure design. We want to keep it simple. We want to make sure it's easy to read, and we want to make sure that people can find the information that they're looking for easily in your brochure. So while we want it to be pretty and creative and aesthetically pleasing, we don't want it to be chaotic or overwhelming. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the specifics. All right, we do want to make sure that your brochure is not 100% like completely boring. A lot of brochures are very boring. They get a bad rap for being just plain and simple and like nothing exciting whatsoever. Part of that might be bad design, part of it might be the fact that there's nothing interesting actually written in it, and it might be low budget. So it's going to be up to you all to find the text that you're going to use in your brochure and make sure that the text or the copy that you're going to use that has information is actually interesting. And then it's going to be up to you to figure out how to design all of that in a way that people actually want to look at the brochure and flip through all the different pages. So, as I mentioned before, these are the different career and technical education programs that the state of Kentucky has. They're all grouped up into different sections. We don't have all of them here at Lafayette, but we have quite a few. So, like, we don't have agricultural or manufacturing necessarily, or let's see, construction technology, but or JROTC. But we have a bunch of the other ones. Pretty much everything else that's on here is a pathway that you can major in here at the school. And like I've mentioned to you before, you can get Adobe certifications in this class. Most of the other career pathways offer their own certifications in different capacities for different things. Some of them are AP certifications, some of them are for different types of software. Okay. Here's some things when you start designing your brochure that I want you to keep in mind. Okay. And these are meant to be helpful to you so that you don't make yet another super boring brochure. Okay. Number one, brochures are meant to sell something. All right. Now, we're not selling something that anybody's going to pay for. We don't have like a traditional consumer, but you do want other students and their families to actually look at this information, and you want to understand what they want to get out of that information. Okay. So before you start planning or writing your brochure, I want to make sure that you understand what people might want out of this. Okay. I want you to think about things like why would they want to take these classes in the first place? And what is that most important thing that your brochure can do for them? What should your brochure tell them about the classes that they might not know from just reading the course description? Okay, what do you think your brochure can do to make sure that they're really well informed in what these classes are actually like before they take them? So think about that kind of stuff. We don't want to just put the most basic info on. We want to make sure that it actually offers up some information and insights into what it's truly like to take the classes. Here's something I do not want you to do. Okay, no offense to our school building, but please don't put pictures of the school building on the brochure. Almost all of the brochures that we have in the counseling office and stuff like that, they all have this exact same picture off Google Images on there. They all look the exact same. So do not put a picture of the school building on there because we want to do something different that's a little bit less boring. Again, not because the school is hideous per se, but because it's already on all the other brochures that exist for the school. So we don't want to repeat the same things. Okay. I do want you to pick out some images that are important and relevant to your consumer. Here's where we do have a little bit of a pickle there. Okay. We don't have a ton of really beautiful photos on hand of kids here at Lafayette doing stuff. Okay. And typically when we go out and we take pictures in like the photo classes and things like that, people tend to feel awkward when you're coming up next to them without permission taking photos of them. So what I have tried to do is grab as much stock photography related to the different careers that we are doing brochures on as I can find. I have scoured the Fayette County website for different photos from different events and things related to our schools. And I want you to pick through those images very, very wisely. Pick images that you, as a student, would be interested in actually seeing in the brochure, but don't look so freaking basic that they seem like a stock photo that just makes no sense being there. We want the images you pick to actually feel like they make sense. And if someone is looking at them that is your age, that's a student, that they're not just completely bored out of their mind looking at whatever pictures you choose. That is tricky. Okay. Some of the pictures I have chosen are very bland, but maybe you can crop them and reuse them in new and different ways. Okay. And we'll talk about those images and look at them here in just a little bit. Now, let's talk about copy because I will use the word copy quite a bit. Okay, copy is just a term for the text that is used in any kind of graphic design. So, anytime you have a paragraph or a block of text, it's referred to as copy. Okay, you are going to have to write your own copy for this project. Now, you can steal all of this information off the internet, and I'm going to show you where to find it today. I want you to use everything that's already there, but you're going to have to choose from that information what is actually interesting copy that you want to put in your brochure versus what is kind of useless and not really important. Okay. We're not selling an actual thing that people have to pay for, but I do want you to sell the idea of these pathways really well. Make sure that the images, the headlines that you choose, and the text that you pick are actually interesting enough that people will bother to read them. You probably understand as a student that most people don't read full paragraphs of text anymore. They skim everything. So, how can you make sure that the text that you pick out is actually necessary and there's not any kind of extra fluff that you don't feel like you need? Okay. One thing I really want you to keep in mind, all right, and I want you to level with me on this. Okay. Nobody that's going to look in this brochure or look at your brochure is actually interested in the school or the program. They are not. Okay. All of you go to this school, you have to take electives. None of you are truly interested in the school or the programs. What you're interested in is how those programs help you and what they might do for your own future. You're interested in yourself, no offense, like not in a vain or selfish sort of way, but you're interested in why you specifically would want to take them in the first place. So think about that. Okay. Why would a student want to take those classes that you've chosen in particular? And how can you get their particular attention? I want you to think about it. Okay. Most people don't buy a smartphone because they want to carry around a phone with them all day. Okay. And for that matter, they actually plan to use it primarily as a phone? Probably not. That's not why most people buy a smartphone. They buy one because they want to stay connected. They want to have their apps accessible. They want to have any kind of information on events and people and things that are happening. That's why. They want to be able to share information quickly. It's not because they want to carry around a block. So, how can you make sure that your brochure sells that idea? Okay, everybody that goes to this school has to have electives no matter what. You have to have a certain amount of credits. How can you make it feel like it's worthwhile to take the specific classes that you are covering in your brochure? And it's trickier than it sounds. Okay, I want you to really think about the headlines and really think about your images that your audience cares about. Okay, the average reader takes less than 5 seconds to glance at the cover of the brochure, okay, and decide whether or not they even want to read it further. So that means that your headlines, your big taglines that you put on your brochure, are extremely important. You want people to actually open it up and you want people to look at the pictures and imagine themselves in that particular scenario or in that setting. So don't pick stuff that you feel like is boring. Make sure that everything that you do has a sense of being attention grabbing to it. You want it to be important or not be there at all. Okay. I also want you to use a very benefits oriented sort of headline. Okay. When you write your headlines, and I'm going to go over these with you and help you figure out good headlines, you'll pitch some and I will give you feedback and we'll go over it until your headlines are nice and strong. But I want you to consider writing headlines that in some way offer something to the reader. Okay, so think about writing your headlines in a way that they are benefits oriented. And what I mean by that is, okay, if you've gotten someone to actually start reading the brochure, they're going to skim the headlines first. And maybe that's all they look at. So you want your headlines to hold their attention and move them through the entire brochure. Tell them what they're going to get out of the pathways in the headlines. Okay. All right. Another thing I want you to consider is when you do start actually designing your brochure, we need to think about hierarchy. We've talked about hierarchy a little bit. Most of you have a very good sense of hierarchy, but I want you to think about how it will affect things in your brochure. Your brochure is going to have 6 tall, skinny pages that just flow front and back on a regular sheet of paper. So, how you organize the stuff inside each of those columns is very important. Hierarchy is all about what someone looks at first and then where their eyes move from there. So you want to think about things like creating contrast between colors, between fonts, between images and text. You want to think about proximity. Okay, how do you group things together and how do you choose to separate them? And you want to think about scale, things like size. Okay, your headlines should be really big, your pictures should be larger, and then your body text should be smaller. Think about what's most important on each page and how you can organize it. And again, we'll get into that a little bit more once you've actually got some text to work with, but that's very important to keeping your audience engaged as they look at the actual brochure. Okay, here are 2 different options you have for your brochure. Okay, you can make 2 different types of layouts. You can either make a basic trifold design that kind of looks like this when it's folded up. So it has a front page and then it kind of flips open. That's one way that you can do it. So typically people open the front page and then they can look at 3 columns on the inside and then there are 2 more kind of on the outside. Or you can do a Z fold design where it folds up kind of like the letter Z and it kind of moves a little bit differently. But however you decide to do it, you want to think about what page is important for your first part, for your second part, and so on and so forth. What page needs to come second, third, fourth, and how important should that information be in the general like progression of things. When we set our stuff up in Adobe Illustrator, you're going to have a very small area to work with. So you're actually not going to need a whole lot of text. It's going to be a lot of headlines and a lot of images, but I want you to think about what's most important first and what should maybe be saved for later on in the set of information that you provide. Okay. Now let's take a couple of minutes and look at some good and some bad brochures. Okay. Here's some bad brochures. All right. We want to make sure that we don't overcrowd the thing too much. We want to make sure that it's easy to read the text. We want to make sure that it's easy to read the headlines and that they don't disappear in all the graphic images. We also want to make sure that if we pick out pictures, it's actually worth having pictures in there. Some pictures, if they're not really necessary, they're just taking up space and they make it more crowded for no reason. And usually it's better to have a bigger picture than it is to have a bunch of small pictures. Okay, same thing with this one here. It's kind of hard to read everything. They're on top of a lot of different colors. There's a lot of different imagery going on. Even though we can see the golf carts themselves really well, the information is hard to pick out. We want everything to be really clear and really easy to use. This does not have to have that much like convoluted, weighed down amount of graphic stuff. Keep it simple, keep it easy to read. So here's some so-called good brochures. Some are better than others. The main thing I want you to get out of these brochures is that each of them sort of have different stylistic choices. Okay. So each brochure is not necessarily good 100%. It's not great across the board. It's just that I've added this section because some of them have interesting shapes and cutouts. Okay, some of them are very different in the way that they use headers. They're either in boxes or maybe they're just very different types of fonts. Some of them are monochromatic. Actually, a lot of them are, meaning that they're only one color with different shades. And a lot of them are also only 2 colors. Sometimes having too many colors is a little bit overwhelming. And I don't want to stifle your creativity, but for this project, you are going to be required to use Lafayette colors for your design. So you're going to have to use reds, blues, whites, grays, that kind of thing, because those are our typical colors that we have here at our school. So here's some different types of brochures. Okay, like take a look at this one. they cut out the pictures in slightly different ways. Okay, it's not just a square picture. It's got nice wavy sort of things to it. Some of the headlines are on top of those blue bubbles. Everything's very easy to read, though. It's okay to have white space. That's perfectly fine. It makes it easier to kind of see where things are and pick out what's important. Okay, here's another one where they've got images inside of different shapes. And if you notice in this one, instead of everything being a white background, some of the panels have color, some of them have a solid background, some of them have a gradient. Okay, just slightly different variations of things. Are they all perfect? No, but they've got slightly different choices. You can make all your photographs black and white if you would like, and you can use just bright pops of color with your text or with your background shapes. Okay, you could do the same thing like what you see here, where they've got a mixture of white backgrounds and solid color backgrounds, things that are overlaying or transparent on top of other stuff. Look at how big, though, the headlines are. Even though we can't really read the text on the screen, you can read the headlines. The copy might be too small, but you can read most of those headlines really well. And that's important. Okay, you can use things that are really bright and bold and colorful. You can fill up a whole page more or less with a big image if you feel like it's genuinely important and useful. Okay, you could do again different types of cutouts, different types of colors. This is basically just three colors, white, gray, and yellow. Okay, I don't include colors in the photos necessarily. Here's some that are cut out in different geometric shapes. Okay, you've got a mixture of fonts. Some of them are script like or handwritten like, and some of them are sans serif. Okay, here's some other little shape elements on top. Think about what is relevant to your people. Okay, the people interested in the fashion design pathway are going to have very different tastes than the people that are interested in the civil engineering pathway or the accounting pathway. Everybody has different stylistic choices that they might be more drawn to. Think about what your audience likes and why that might matter to them. Here's some other just different types of shapes and things. So again, you don't have to do anything radically different. The big trick, in my opinion, is picking out quality pictures that are interesting to your audience and picking out headlines that matter to your audience. Okay, at the end of the day, it is still a brochure and it is still going to look like a brochure. Here's some other little options there. And there are a few more on Canvas that are a little bit different. I just couldn't quite fit them in the format of the slideshow. But these have nice other little hand-drawn elements on top, very different types of sort of handwritten fonts. And look at this one. This one is very little information at all. It has exactly what you need and nothing more, nothing less. Okay, there's another one. All right, and that's it. So that's some examples there. Okay, I want you to focus today on figuring out how you're going to impress your audience and make them actually interested in what it is that this pathway has to offer. So again, if you look on this page, this says Intro to CTE Brochure Project. This slideshow I just showed you is on there. You can look back at it. Okay, I have this document right here where you sign up. Now let's talk about this sign up document for a second. Most of you have already signed up, but there's other stuff in this document. If you scroll down, this document has a bunch of basic resources for the project. So like number one, here are the things that you are required to have in your brochure. And let's go over them together. Sorry, I have Grammarly installed and it just pops up when it feels like it. Okay. So you are required to have the title of the pathway really large, really easy to read somewhere in your brochure. You need to list the classes that are in that pathway. So, like for our media arts pathway, you have media arts 1, you have 2D design or two dimensional design, and then you have advanced production. Each of the pathways have a flow of classes similar to that. And I've got those outlined for you below. I'll get there in just a second, but you've got to list them in your brochure. You also need to think about the sequence of those classes. So most of them in your like class directory have a suggested schedule for like what you should take as a ninth grader and what you should take as a 10th grader and so on and so forth if you're going to be in this pathway. Mention that in there. Okay, if any of the classes have a prerequisite, make sure that you mention that. So a prerequisite is a class that you have to take and pass before you move on to another one. Make sure that those are listed. Most pathways have prerequisites, okay? Give a general overview paragraph and information on just what the pathway is. List some careers in that area. So try to come up with a list of 7 to 10 careers that are related to that area. Now, if you pick something like engineering or accounting, I know that you could be an engineer or that you could be an accountant, but there are lots of other jobs within those areas that are related that you can mention. There are lots of different types of accountants, lots of different types of engineers. Okay. Now, most of the pathways have an email contact for that area, someone that's sort of in charge of that area. If you can't find that, let me know and I'll get that information for you. But we do want to list that on there. So if someone's interested, they have questions, they can email that person that's in charge of that pathway and ask more. Another thing I want you to mention, we are required by the state of Kentucky for all of our CTE pathways to have a club that is related to that pathway. So when you see this abbreviation here, CTSOs, that's an abbreviation for clubs. Those are clubs that are required by the state of Kentucky to have. So we have a bunch of different student clubs. They are different for the different career pathways. Whatever the CTSO or the club is for your pathway, I want you to list it and write 2 to 3 sentences just about what that club does. Okay. If that club or that pathway has a club, there's usually a logo for that specific club. Find that logo and include it. So, like the one for media arts is actually TSA, which Mr. Steele leads. Okay, so TSA is a CTSO for our particular pathway. Okay, you are supposed to include at least 4 photos that are not logos somewhere in your brochure. Where you put them, how you place them, what size they are, up to you, but at least 4 pictures. You are required to use a red, white, blue, gray, and or silver combination, any combination of those colors in your design. Okay, so no bright yellow, no Frederick Douglass orange and green, no Taste Creek maroon, none of that other stuff. Keep it Lafayette colors. Okay, and then finally, the last thing you have to have is you need to list the certifications that you can get in your pathway. Okay. And if that certification leads to college credit, like quite a few of our pathways have AP courses or things that do lead to college credit in some capacity, mention that as well. Okay. Now, if you scroll down, this is a packet. This is a big document that has a bunch of stuff in it. So if you scroll down, I have got listed down here basic like graduation requirements. Okay, you are required to have, somebody actually asked me earlier, yeah, 10 electives to graduate. Okay, and there are different sort of recommendations on what types of credit you take depending on what type of like degree or diploma you want to get. Okay, I've also got a list of all the different sort of sequences of classes that you're supposed to take. So if you're interested in our culinary pathway, here's kind of how you should take those classes, ninth grade through 12th grade. Okay, if you keep scrolling, here's the one for business and marketing. Here's the one for engineering and architecture. So it's got all of the classes listed and the general order you're supposed to take them in. And these are just screenshots from the student directory, but you can scroll through and see so that they're easy to find. If you keep scrolling, I have a description of every class that is in a CTE pathway. So if you need to come up with some writing on what exactly like the media arts pathway does, or what exactly like the accounting pathway does, see if you can find some information from the course description that you can use. Okay, what can you use to kind of fill out that information further? And all of these different classes are listed on there so you can have a better idea of what each one does. And there's a bunch of them. So find your particular pathway and then look there in that particular section. And if I keep scrolling, okay, I also have at the very bottom of this document information on those clubs, those CTSOs that you have to include. So here are the different ones for different categories. Like business and marketing, they have DECA. Okay, they also have FBLA. Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America, or FCCLA, is our Family and Consumer Sciences Program Area Club. We have TSA. Okay, and you can find descriptions of all of those clubs at this link down here at the bottom of the page. If you just click it, it'll take you to the state directory on each one of these different clubs, and you can find tons of information on them. So I've already located for you a bunch of stuff. You just have to figure out what you're going to write and how exactly you're going to put it all together. So as far as an assignment for today, okay, if you look back on Canvas, there are a couple of different things you're going to work on. So, number one, you're going to complete a brochure outline first. Okay, so underneath the introduction page just has a bunch of links and resources. Okay, but then you have your CTE brochure outline. You're going to click this assignment and you're going to make a copy of a Google Doc. Okay, so the Google Doc looks just like, not that, looks just like this. Okay. So in here, you're going to go in, you're going to write your name, you're going to tell me what your pathway area is, and you're going to answer these general questions. These are the requirements of the things you have to have in your brochure. I just want you to gather your information first. So write up an overview paragraph of the pathway. Find the classes that are in that pathway and list them. Google some careers for that pathway and list them. What's a description for the CTSO? And just as a reminder, I copied and pasted these exact requirements from that table down here at the bottom if you want to look at it. And then there's also some links to stuff. So if you're looking for information, you can't find it in my document that I just showed you, you can look at these different links that are down at the bottom and find some more info. But your brochure, if you look at it, it's only got about a page worth of information. That's it. And it'll be very short and very sweet. We don't want to have too much stuff that people have to read. Okay. Now, lastly, some of you won't get to this part today, but if you do, okay, I am going to ask you to do some brainstorming on what headlines you're going to use, and I am going to ask you to do a sketch of your brochure. This is in the form of a quiz. I just tried it in that format. We'll see how it goes. But basically, because I was asking for two different things, when you do get ready for this stage, you'll hit take the quiz, and all you're actually going to do in question number one, you're just going to tell me what are the headlines for your different sections. Okay. What are you going to write as the headline, the main thing that people are going to read in each of the sections of your brochure? And there should be at least one headline for every page. You can have more than one, at least one. And then down here at the bottom, you'll just attach a sketch like you usually make for most of your assignments that we do. Okay, so that's not due today, but if you have time, you can go ahead and start it after you complete your outline. Okay, so that's kind of a general overview. The only other thing listed under today is again movie requests that you have to watch after we finish our final. But we'll begin officially building this in Illustrator next class. If you want to go ahead and take a look at the images that are available that I found, now you can find some other images, you just need to check with me before you use them. But there's a link up here to a big Google folder. And let's see, I lost it. There it is. Okay, inside here, it is a lot of stock photos. Some of them are actually from Fayette County, so they have actual Fayette County people in them. Like if this one will load when it feels like it. Anyway, there's some that are like graduation pictures and some things like, I think Mr. Matson's in one of these. Yeah, there he is. Okay, so there's like some that are genuinely from here. And then there's some that are, stock photos that Mr. found online that are somehow related. And they're going to show buildings that are, nice and new and fancy and not ours. But it's okay. We're going to use what we can get. We want to have good photos. And remember, you can crop things down. A lot of the photos are related to career specific things. So there's a whole pathway on retail management, and there's pictures related to that. There are different engineering and computer programming and architecture photos and different entrepreneurship type photos, like child family services classes and things of that nature. So there's a bunch of that stuff in here. Now, if you are doing like the media arts or the interactive design pathway, I grabbed some student artwork that you can use. I'm only allowing you to use this particular artwork because A, these people have graduated and granted me the permission to use it. And B, I didn't want to take anything from you all without your permission. If you are doing one of those pathways and you would like to include some of your own work, you can. Okay, but I just want you to make sure you pick pictures that are not there just for no reason, but are actually like interesting and intriguing to your reader. Okay, so sometimes just having pictures of student work is not necessarily the most interesting, but everybody has a different opinion on different things. Okay, so we're going to focus on the outline first. The outline is due today. Get the outline done, do the research so that we can begin building stuff next class. Now, does anybody have any questions, any like general overview questions that they would like to discuss? Okay, we're very quiet. Very quiet. We feel okay about the project. This is your last project. This is your final exam. No written questions. So it is worth a big grade. And I will tell you, We are going to have them printed. So these will be printed and in stock for scheduling with the eighth grade classes at the very beginning of next semester. And they'll be here in our own guidance office for people that are interested in them. So you will have printed copies of your work available for people to look at. We are also going to make a digital copy. We're going to do one that people can access via a link online. And we're going to build it in a program called Issue. Let me see if I can find a good example of an issue really quick. Issue lets you make digital sort of flip books so that we could actually upload. Just show me an example. But basically, you can flip through your different pages of your brochure. So we'll have a digital copy that people can actually like open and flip and turn the pages on, in addition to the printed out copies that will actually be folded and available for people to pick up. So this is something people will see. This is something people will use. Just keep that in mind. Okay. All right, cool. No other